welcome back, you fucking weirdos, to RMP. I'm Zachary, your host of this motherfucking podcast. And you can catch me on Instagram at The Muscle Hamster. And we're here to question the mess, make some rebel actions, and start living life on our own terms. We have so many things to question. But first, I would like to admit a fault in my character. And I know that secrets don't make friends, and I know that, coming from a quote-unquote mid-pack athlete, the hardcore training that I put myself through and the regimen and the discipline, I do tend to come off the rails a little bit, and it's time to fess up. And I just want you guys to know that for the last couple of years, I will overly stress, and I will go to my local grocery store and I will buy these foreign $1.49 flavored wafer cookies, and I will eat the whole pack. And I know it's shameful, but they come in lemon and chocolate and vanilla being the best, and they are hundreds of calories for one little pack, but $1.49, they were the nicest little treat that I could get for cheap and not feel bad about the money that I'm using. But the problem is I'm still putting in some nasty calories. I think it was like 360 calories for a pack, and there was like 3 servings in it. So maybe not horrible. It's better than binging a few thousand calories, which I've done many times before. But yeah, I figured it was time to fess up. But also, liquid death is one of my new favorite things, and at 20 calories a can, I am not ashamed of it. And maybe it's the skull that's on the front, maybe it's the name of the brand, maybe it's their flavor names: Buried Alive, Severed Lime. Yeah, I like them, and they make me not feel bad about myself. And for some reason, I like carbonated water. I don't get it. But to bring more to the podcast, I brought in another admirable, or at least by my standards, super admirable athlete, also a trainer. And it seems that we're getting on to a little bit of a theme here. And I'm wondering what it is about my own mind that makes me ask these people for their stories and for their guest spots on the podcast. And I think that I want people to realize number one, the power of individuality and the power of making decisions for ourselves and the power of diversity, but also questioning how it is that they see other humans. Because what I'm finding in other humans, which comes straight from my own just blatant curiosity and this knack for wanting to not objectify people, I'm finding great beauty in mind, body, and spirit with people. And I need to have more conversations, and I'm looking to figure out how I can create more conversations and have more guests and bring more diversity to the podcast. And I have my own issues of why that hasn't come to be. I am a creator, but I do struggle with business decisions and networking and communication, oddly enough, which very odd. It's very odd because I claim to be a communicator. But anyways, I want to introduce you to this next guest that told an amazing story, and she will be back for 2.0 because we are going to get into the technicality and the specifics of her as a trainer and being I think she's a dietitian or nutritionist, one of the two. Oh man, I'm confusing things. But she's very smart. She's had a crazy story, and she's been through so many different types of athletics. She's been through uh, body dysmorphia things. She's been through a lot of mental anguish things with her story and her athletics and the athletic world that she's been through. And she's crossed so many different realms of what athlete means, and she's dealt with injury, and she's, you know, tapped into this balance of being human and being an athlete. And there's so much more to being an athlete than I think some people understand. I think that some people that are on the outside don't realize what athletes tend to go through, what that training is like for them, what that does for them. I think that people don't also realize what it creates for the mental and emotional state as well. And so before I get too carried away and down this philosophical path, I want you guys to listen to this next guest. She's super fantastic. And let me read off her bio. This is going to be coming from her perspective, and I'm going to read it off for you. Here it is. Jenn says, although I came from a rocky start, fitness has been my passion for many years. I was an athlete as a child, and I was a gymnast for 8 years, and that is a sport that stole my heart. I also played soccer, outdoor hockey, and pitched for a baseball team. During high school, I put my athletics aside as I struggled to find out who I was. It wasn't until after high school I picked it back up and started my journey into the fitness world, starting as a runner/yogi and making my way all the way to bodybuilding and strongman competitions. Fitness has taken up a lot of my hobbies, but I also enjoy the outdoors, spending time with my family, learning, and gaming. Fitness truly saved my life, and that is why I work so hard to help others learn more about themselves and unlock their potential inside and outside the gym. So, without giving too much more away, this is episode 101 of the RMP with Jennifer Dees. So I was definitely thinking, I was like, Jennifer's got this vibe of balance. And obviously I was first thinking, you know, physical, because you're so much like so across the board with all this stuff, like everything that pertains to physical health. But eventually there's an outlet that connects it to mental and emotional health too, in my opinion. Let's make sure everybody knows who you are. So, and then we'll kind of get into your story a little bit, but what is it that you do? Let everybody know why you are as smart as you are, Jenn, and go.
So I am a personal trainer. I've been a personal trainer since 2013. I love fitness. And for me, the biggest thing that drove me to be a trainer is that it truly changed my life. And so for me, it was me going into it saying, if I could change one person's life and one person's mental state, that's what I want to do. So I became a personal trainer, and I am one of those people who likes to have all the answers. So I studied. I was working a different job when I was doing my certification, but I was on the computer 24/7, studying nutrition and studying workouts and the most efficient ways, whatever. I also like to pursue new certifications because fitness and what we're learning in the fitness industry is changing rapidly.
Constantly.
And so continuing your education is extremely important, I think, for you to be able to be a successful trainer, not only for yourself, but for the client. I think the client deserves to have the best information that we have available to us. And so, I basically spent a lot of time educating myself in order so I can educate my clients.
Yeah, no. And I think that with anything that you're going to do, you have to be willing to dive into it. And I think that's one of the separations between figuring out who you are and then figuring out just something that's going to be sustainable, you know, maybe something that's not necessarily a dream or a passion. And I think people have a hard time in between those two things trying to figure it out. And I think it takes a lot of trial and error. I've been through so much shit in the last 5 years trying to figure out what exactly I'm supposed to do. But I can tell because of the way that you're constantly talking about these things, and obviously the way you're built. I'm gonna make sure that people can get some pictures of you because you're a fucking beast. And like it's one of those it's one of those what do you call them, it messes with your mind a little bit because you're so well built, you know, and it almost looks like you're a 6 foot human, but you're actually what, like 5 foot.
I'm 4'11". Yeah.
4'11". That's fucking amazing. Amazing. So do you think that there was a catalyst that got you to get into fitness? Like, what was there any sort of trauma or experience or anything that like really made you push towards this? Or is this like just an instinctive, innate, you know, desire for this type of thing?
Well, so I was an athlete when I was a kid. I was a gymnast for 8 years. I played soccer. I was like, my persona as a kid was like, I was like this hardcore neighborhood girl that led the boys. That was my persona as a child. And that has always been kind of who I am. And I let that kind of fall away in high school, just going through, like, I didn't really have a very good home life growing up and stuff like that. So I battled with like my self-esteem a lot. And I kind of disappeared for a little while and I didn't do anything and I didn't feel good about myself. And about when I was like 19 years old, I can still remember looking at myself in the mirror one time and just being like, I don't like this. Like, I didn't like the way that I looked. I didn't like the way that I felt. I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like it. So I started running and like doing, you know, workout videos and whatever I could get my hands on. And that's when I really started studying the fitness thing too, because again, I want to be the best at whatever I do. And I fell in love really fast. At first for me though, it was, and I know this now, at first for me though, it was largely a mental health thing. I was struggling with my mental health a lot. And so I was chasing workout highs because I was getting endorphins. I was getting serotonin. Like, that's kind of where the addiction started, was for me to like fix my mental health. And then from there, I actually was just like working out at my local rec center, and I build pretty easily just because of my past in athletics. And the owner of the gym floor, she came up to me one day and she was like, hey, like, a lot of people ask if you're a trainer, if you get certified, I'll hire you.
Oh, boom.
And I was like, oh,
opportunity.
Okay. And so she told me to do the NASM certification, and I said, okay. And I got it done within a few months, and I started working with people. And honestly, I fell in love with it from the very, very start.
Well, and so this is something that is so intriguing to me, because we can get so inside of our own story and it's inside of our own world, right? And the conversation with yourself is always going to be the most influential, you know. And the in my opinion, the point of having a supportive community is to help maintain that voice and help you make sure that voice is healthy. But the way that you talk to yourself is going to be the thing that gets you to act on things, right? And so was it before you actually made this jump? So were you a gymnast as an adolescent?
Yeah.
Okay. So at some point, like, something, go ahead.
Yeah, I had quit when I was about 13, and it was honestly because my parents, I was traveling and like training 6 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And it was
That's
like
a lot.
My parents couldn't afford it, and they thought it was interrupting my school. And so they made me quit, and it killed me. And I think it killed me because my dream was to go to the Olympics. Like, I was actually a really good gymnast, but so I think that's kind of killed the fire inside of me for a little while.
Well, yeah. And then if you lose something like that, because if it's that early on that you have a connection to something like that, and then you lose it, you're also 13 and you don't have the knowledge or base yet of what it takes to maintain mental health and how important that is, and to like continue to fight for something, right? And so you all of a sudden lose the one thing that is most important to you, probably. And where do you go from there? And so it sounds like you kind of went off an edge a little bit and kind of lost your identity almost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
So there had to have been so much change between then and 19, like body changes, mental changes, emotional changes, especially because you're already a fucking teenager that's hormonal as hell, just like the rest of us, you know? So, and then at some point you came back, and was it just you being fed up?
I think it was part of that, but if you want me to be completely honest with you, I always will say that I think a part of it has to do with like my dad. So I didn't have a good relationship with him, and he wasn't very nice to me. But I will tell you that the one thing that my dad was always proud of me for was my athletic ability. So like when we would go to parties and things like that, he would brag because I could 100% beat any of their kids there, male, female, didn't matter. Like
alpha male.
And so that was the one
alpha
thing
female,
that, like,
I'm sorry.
yeah. And so that was like the one thing that like I tied my self-worth to, I guess. And I didn't know that as much until I started competing in bodybuilding, because I remember when I competed in bodybuilding, I had this really hard time. So like my dad's not in my life anymore. I haven't talked to him in like 12 or 13 years. And I just remember every single day being upset because I wanted him to know that I became a pro athlete. Like, I just want him to know that I was successful. Like, just please let him know that, find me on the internet and see that I was successful as an athlete. Like, that was always something that went through my head every single day. So I always tell people, I know that that's always been in the back of my mind, like literally from day one. But it was also just, but the catalyst, I think, really was just me being tired of my own shit and knowing that I had more in me. Like looking in the mirror and being like, this isn't who I am. And I need to find that.
No, I think I think the cool thing is that we can decide on how we have a perspective on something, right? It can be a positive or a negative. And, you know, you could have definitely looked back. You could look back at that and say, hey, what if I would have gone in the other direction? Like, where would I be? Like, even if the catalyst, you know, was an emotional thing or a negative thing, like it still pushed you forward in a good direction comparatively to what it could have been, right? Yeah. And so once you, at that point, when someone's like, hey, maybe you should be a trainer, where do you go from here? Because I kind of generally know what you've gone through now, but I want everybody else to know what you've gone through.
So
because you've cross-trained a lot.
I have. So do you want to know more about the side of like the personal training side or my personal fitness side?
Well, I kind of want to know both. Okay. But I want people to see how colorful you've been through all of this stuff, because I know the athletics that you've been in just by kind of scoping you out and everything. And I think it'll help people give a little bit of relatability. So what did you do? Because I know you started competing in a bunch of different things. So where did things go after you started to get really, really, really back into physical fitness?
So the funny thing is, I actually started out running.
You're a runner.
I ran half marathons. Yeah.
Oh man, even that's hard.
Which sounds horrible now.
But, yeah. Tell me about it.
But I was training for Roby Creek because that was
that's a hard one.
My last like hurrah of like, if I beat this, you know, whatever. And I was overtraining, you know how that is.
As we do.
Because I was running probably between 8 and 12 miles a day just because I like to. And I weighed like 100 pounds then, like I was little. And I tore my hip flexor. I was sprinting hills and I tore my hip flexor, and I continued to run on it for a few weeks. And then I remember one day I came home and I sat down on the couch and I tried to stand back up and my leg just completely collapsed out from under me. And I was like, damn it.
Oh, that hurts to even think about.
I have to do something about this now, because I had been like ibuprofen-ing it, running, whatever. And then when I obviously went to go see the doctor, they were like, yeah, this has been like bleeding for weeks. Like, why, what are you doing?
Oh, Jesus. I'm so scared for you right now.
So, so then they were like, yeah, you're not gonna be running or doing anything like that anytime soon, blah, blah, blah. I was super devastated, but here's what I did. I went to the gym on my crutches and I started lifting weights. I did not lift weights previously to that. And so I just started doing upper body. I was bro lifting. I was benching, doing curls, doing shoulders, and that's pretty much all I did. And I did that for a while, and I loved it. I fell in love with it because I get strong pretty fast. And so I became the alpha female of the gym pretty fast.
Yeah, the first time I saw you, I was legit scared of you.
A lot of people kind of have that initial response to me. So then from there, I ended up moving away because I had gotten married and my husband was in the military, and we were living in Everett, Washington, because he was on the USS Nimitz. And I trained out there for a little while. And then I came back here, started working at Axiom in about the end of 2015. And started training clients there. And the thing that got me into the during that time, I was doing like sports agility. So I was doing some lifting, but by the time I was at Axiom, like I love circuit training. Like I'm an evil circuit training person.
How dare
my clients, they don't give me too much caffeine because they might do a circuit and they might hate me. But anyways, so like box jumps, burpee box jumps, give me all the push presses, whatever, make me run. I don't care. Love it. But anyway, so I started training clients there, and I had this conversation with the client at one point, and she was like, well, you don't know what it's like to have to lose 30 pounds. You've never had diet. You don't know how to do this and that, whatever. And I had a boss who did bodybuilding shows and stuff like that. So I said, you know what? All right, bet. Let's lose 30 pounds, because that's about what I was going to have to lose to get on stage. So,
oh my God, here we
go. I was like, all right, I will show you that it is 100% possible to be disciplined if you want it.
And so at this point, were you already getting ready to prep for bodybuilding, or was this kind of like this thing of like, you're just going to do it to prove a point?
I was proving a point.
Okay. Continue.
So I did it myself the first time.
Programming and nutrition.
Yeah. In about 12 weeks or 10 or 12 weeks, and got on stage. I still placed first call outs or whatever, but it was kind of like, meh. I saw the girls there. When I got to the bodybuilding show and I saw the girls there, I was like, okay, all right, this, okay. Like I can do this. And obviously I didn't place quite as well as I wanted to. So I was like, I could do better. I could do better. And I'm going to tell you right now that my clients watching me do that show motivated a lot of them.
Good.
Because they sat there and they watched me do my cardio, eat everything that I was supposed to eat. I was 100% on point at all times. I was sleeping when I was supposed to, was getting up when I was supposed to. If you want it, you go and you get it. So anyways, but that was my first experience with stage, and but then, having the athlete inside of me being like, well, I can do better than this. I could get first. So then I had a friend, her name's Christy Higgs. She actually runs a program called Girl Hustle. And she's done a really nice job, but her coach was Damian Segovia of Pro Physiques. If you know anything about Damian Segovia, which you probably don't because he's not a social media person, he trains like Sydney Gillian, who is 5 times Miss Olympia in figure, and then Whitney Jones, who is 3 times Miss Olympia in fitness.
Gotcha.
So he's got a big wig, right? So she told me, hey, listen, this is my coach. I think if you get a coach, you'd be really good.
That much better, right?
I said, all right, and she's like, it's just, he only accepts certain clients. I was like, okay. So I sent him pictures from my show and he was like, oh yeah, we got potential. He's like, a very blunt, like, person. So he's like, yeah, that suit didn't fit you. Your makeup was hideous. Your tan was wrong, but we can fix it. He was like, I can fix it.
But it's like no bullshit. Like there's no nuance. It's just like straight to the point. Get the fix. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Well, and I always tell people the first like year or two that he trained me, I thought he hated me because Damian is like a no words, good word. So like if you send him check-ins and he doesn't really say much, it's good. Basically, if he says something, then you probably did something. You're not doing something right. So for a long time, he's not somebody who gives you as much feedback, basically. And so I had to learn how to like, which was good for me. It was hard for me, but I think it was good for me because I had to learn how to rely on my own feedback a little bit and rely on knowing that I was following, I was doing my best and I was following the work. So the only expectations that I really needed to have was that if I was doing my best job, then my physique would reflect that and nothing else mattered. Like I didn't need to worry about anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important too, is that you really need to trust your coach, right? So like a lot of people are like, well, I'm not lean enough here and I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. It's like, okay, well, do you trust your coach? Do you trust the process? Because if you do, then follow directions and keep going. Yeah. That's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter how you look. You're not at your final stage. Yeah. So don't get caught up on that. So anyways, and then I competed for 2 years pretty heavily. Got first place both times regionally. And then on USA's, I competed twice and I got 6th place, ironically, both times. And back then I was disappointed about it. Now knowing what I know and looking at my physique then, I'm like, I just didn't have the muscle maturity and I didn't have the size, partly because I decided to compete naturally, and competing naturally in the NPC is kind of hard. Yeah. It just takes more. Yeah. It just takes more time, basically. Like now I feel like I could get on a stage, on the NPC stage, and my size is not a problem.
You mean fly on the stage? I've seen those wings.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely grown a lot since I've been on stage, because I was on stage last time about 114 pounds and I sit around 150.
Wow. Yeah.
Chilling, Yeah. So anyways, so that was kind of that. And then I saw kind of one of your questions of if anybody had challenged me or said no to my fitness. And that was actually my ex-husband.
Oh, okay.
He did not like my bodybuilding at all. And he did not like me weightlifting, to be honest with you. He did not like my size. And it came down, and like when he would come to my shows, he was always mad the whole time. And then, it came down to the point where he was like, I literally just, I don't find you attractive anymore because you're too muscular, And so for me, it made my show experience a little bit negative. But it also required me to be more steadfast in what I wanted.
Yeah.
because it was kind of almost like an ultimatum of, hey, you quit doing what you're doing, or like, I don't really want to be with you, kind of sort of thing.
Well, I think it definitely gives an idea of where your personal basics of attraction are compatible or not. Does that make sense? Like, I think we have to go into a relationship knowing that people are going to change for whatever reason, because it's part of progress and it's part of people's paths. Like, it's not going to be straight. So if someone's getting into a relationship with you and their expectation is that you're gonna walk this straight line that they've already assumed you're gonna do, and then you detour, then are they willing enough to accept that? Are they willing enough to accept you as a human and know that your potential may lie completely outside of where you're at right now, and accepting people as they grow and having core values that about a human and about attraction that aren't so biased, maybe. And, that's why we always have to seek out attraction beyond the physical stature. It's to me, it's based around emotional values and mental values and physical values and all these things together, like even spiritual values. Political, I don't know if I can completely agree with that one, but I think it makes sense to know somebody deeper than just their physicality. And maybe that's why we shouldn't be getting married at 18. I don't know. Personal opinion. But yeah, that's tough, because that you were changing for yourself, and then all of a sudden somebody's not okay with that was supposed to love you for everything that you are, right?
Yeah. So that was a battle for me, and it's still kind of a battle as far as like my security as being a muscular female, because not everybody likes that, and that's fine. Like, honestly, that really doesn't bother me anymore, as far as like everybody likes something a little bit different,
Yeah. What was that feedback like? Because obviously I know a bunch of women that are into the sports and they constantly get it, and I can't imagine what the fuck that's like for you guys, honestly. How did that hit you? I guess I'm getting a little deep here, but I mean, I'm curious. How's that hit you? Or then, at least.
Especially then, it made me really insecure, because it made me feel like everybody felt that way, and he kind of made me feel like everybody felt that way.
Like you made a story up about it.
It was just like, well, like nobody fucking likes girls that are, have, shoulders that are the size of their fucking head,
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it's really hard. And and my grandma was the same way. A lot of my family, my family is super old school. And so like, I remember I go to family functions and my grandma was like, you're never going to find another man if you look like that, sort of deal. And I've had people, say things on the street, at grocery stores, things like that. And I'm for a long time, I would just cover up when I went out. So like, I just would wear like baggier shirts, or like basically things that made it less obvious how muscular I was, because I just didn't really want that conversation to come up, basically. And I don't know, sometimes it pisses me off, but at this point in my life and of what I've learned, obviously we kind of know that it's a lot more of a reflection of how they feel about themselves. So what's happened is I have triggered some sort of insecurity that they have when they look at me, and I don't have to feel bad about that. I try not to feel bad that, what I like is not what they like, basically.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think the ideal of what the expectation that women are supposed to be this certain particular thing physically is it's very closed-minded and it's very immature. And I think it comes out in a lot of men. And I think it's something that we're trying to mold into something new based off of what we historically know about ourselves. And I think, the new age of all of this, all these connections between us, and we're helping each other with studies, and we're helping each other with perspective and everything. But the hard part about it is it's not so majorly pushed on men, or it's more in the background for men than I think it is women. Like if somebody at my age of 34, if somebody was constantly telling me, hey, you're super unattractive because you're only 5 foot tall. If I was constantly getting barrage, being called a hobbit or, midget or something like that, I'd probably be fucking annoyed. Obviously, nobody, like, people have picked on me, but it's not like I get up that on the street. Like, women would get this thing about them looking manly, or what if it was women too? What if women were out there, just harping on men, and for sake of me, or, not being able to think of anything else. What if women could see your dick and they're like, huh, that's super unattractive, and that's never going to be any good. No one's ever going to love you because of how small your dick is. A little vulgar, but you know what I mean? Like, take the most insecure things that men have and harp on them about that, and even if it's the opposite, guys that were genetically skinny. And I'm sure you understand that genetics can hinder you and they can also help you. Yeah. Right. And if there's guys that are legitimately skinny, and we have this primitive view that men are only supposed to be bigger and better than women for security and safety. Well, what about the guys that genetically aren't built like that? Or don't even want to look like that? What if they are runners? Maybe what if that's their lifestyle? What if that's their livelihood? Maybe they're professional in some sort of sport. And I don't think it's ever going to be quite as relatable, but I'd really like men to think about that. Like, look at that perspective. Like, what if somebody treated you like that? And maybe that's where men are more emotionally disconnected, maybe. But yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing to go through. So now that we're done with my rant, so you get into bodybuilding, and what happens after this? Because I know you moved into something else too, right?
Yeah. So I, after I left my relationship, I was spending a lot of time at our local Berserker, where a lot of strongman competitors are. And Alex was always on me. He was like, I want to train you for strongman. He would watch me lift and he'd be like, please let me train you for strongman. Like, you're so strong. And me being like not in a good emotional place at the time, and I wasn't planning on competing anytime soon because you need to kind of be like on top of your game. I was like, all right, let's do this. So I competed in my very first strongman competition, and it was so fun. I had a fucking blast. And the first one I did compete in my weight class, which was lightweight, and it was like 120, like 125 or under or something like that. I know, small. And I ended up getting second place, but the first place lady was a pro, so I didn't really feel that bad. And I was like right on her heels. And she even came up to me after the competition and said, you would need this much to become a pro. And that made me feel really good. I was like, all right, cool. And I'd only trained for like 8 weeks. So Alex was like, dude, if we like just train you for like a little while, you could be crazy. So then I trained for my second competition, which I started to get really crazy strong at. And it was actually disappointing because when I saw the roster, one of the events was 150-pound log press. And so I practiced because that was kind of hard for me. And I wanted to make sure that I nailed it. And I freaking nailed it over and over again in practice with Alex. And then they took it off of the God thing because none of the other girls could do it. I was like, well, I can do it. But anyways, so they ended up doing 135 for reps, which, I obviously won that because I had been practicing with 150 pounds. And in that competition, I competed with not my class. And I was more weight at the time. I weighed about 140 pounds and there was no middle weights. So they had me compete with the heavyweights, and that was 175 plus. And I still took first place.
Boom.
I won every single event except for the stones. And that was just because of height. I have a height disability.
Because that bar has to be set at a certain height, right?
Yeah, it goes so like you do the stone and then they raise it and then you have to get the stone over and then they raise it and then you just until it gets up higher. And the lady who beat me was over 6 feet tall, and I was like, well,
Jesus.
I'm 4'11", dude, so it's just not gonna happen. Like I can't even reach that high.
Yeah. When we're talking about limitations, that's probably the extreme right there. Like,
yeah,
right. Unless you have to press it above your, with your shoulders. That's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, I got one over. The bar was a little bit over my head, and I had gotten it up and over that one. But any farther than that, it was kind of like, I'm done. Not to mention with strongman, it's a lot of endurance because you're doing the stone and then they're raising it and then you do it again. And the stone's 180 pounds. So it's not like it's light, and then you do it again. And so at some point, especially when it's getting that high and that sketchy, like in my mind, I had already won all the other events. And I was like, I ain't risking it. It's not worth an injury. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, after that competition, I started going hard in strongman, and I was going to chase, a national title in that. Then my back injury happened in March of 2021. And it's funny how it didn't happen like me doing anything cool. I how'd you injure your back? And I'm like telling him, I deadlifting, this much, and I'm carrying 180 pound stones, and they just expect that that's the situation. But no, I was actually here in the gym here, and I was warming up on squats, and I had done the bar, just the bar, and I had thrown my 25s on. And I got under the bar, and as soon as I unracked it, I felt this weird just pain in my back. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, and I started to go down, and I was like, this is not going to go well. So I re-racked it, and I kind of shook it off, gave myself a couple minutes. And then I tried to get back under the bar, and it was not going to happen. It was just not going to happen. So I said, okay, cool. We're not working out today. And then I had a client after that. And by the end of my client's appointment, I could not stand or get off the floor.
And did you know something, have a good idea of what was going on?
No. I had never had any back pain. Because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I wasn't even going to go to the doctor. My stepsister showed up here because I was like, hey, I kind of told her what happened. And she showed up here and was like, okay, well, you need to go to the doctor. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'll be fine. She's like, no. She's
typical
like,
athlete.
You can't even stand up by yourself. And I was like, okay, well, all right, fine.
I'll sleep it off.
It's fine and whatever. I was like, I could just take some ibuprofen like I did for my hip. But anyway, I went to Doc Orthopedics, and they were like, oh, you probably have like a bulging disc or something. Like, we'll give you some steroids. You'll be fine. And I will tell you, by the time I had gone to the doctor, I was really into a state of mind of this is something is really wrong. Yeah. So I told them, I said, hey, I think I need some sort of scan. And they were like, well, we don't have an MRI here, so I can give you an x-ray. And I said, please. So they gave me an x-ray. And I knew the moment that the lady asked the doctor, she left for a second, and then the doctor asked for more scans, that something was wrong. Mm-hmm. And so then the doctor came back after I was done, and he's like, yeah, so I'm pretty glad that we did an x-ray today, because it looks like that your low back is fractured on both sides.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was like, just in shock. In shock. So basically L5 to S1. So where your spine connects into your sacrum, so like into your pelvic bone. There's those two little spine pieces that kind of go like this as you move because they're flexible. Both of those had broken off.
Oh, Jesus.
Boom. Broke. And my spine had shifted 3 millimeters forward. So, I was super devastated, and the funny thing is they weren't like super big on giving me pain meds. And so I was like, that's fine or whatever. And then I went home, and I literally, and I'm not even joking you, I passed out onto the floor 3 times from the pain before they took me into the ER and like doped me up basically.
Wow. Wow.
And so, yeah. And then I slept on a recliner for 4 months because I was not allowed to lay flat on my back because it was too much pressure. I basically was on a ton of pain meds at the time. I tried to do everything that I could. I did hyperbarics. I did PMF mat. I came here occasionally, and they would help me in and out of like the pain light and stuff because sometimes I just needed to get out of the house. You know, obviously I couldn't drive or anything, but I'd get somebody to take me to do stuff. But I basically lived out of a chair for about 4 months. And that's life-changing.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Kind of feeling like we're getting to the peak of your fitness and strength and everything, and then have it all just kind of be swiped out from under you is it's something. I definitely struggled a lot with my mental health, with my just security in anything anymore, because my future wasn't secure anymore, because literally all the way through, you know, so here's what's, you know, annoying and scary, because obviously the doctors have to like check you every so often. So I'd go in once a month for them to check my legs. And because the complication of pars fractures is paraplegia.
I was going to say probably potential of being paraplegic.
Yeah. So for me, I was just at all times just scared. So like I never slept, because every time I would like fall asleep, I'd wake up in a panic and try to see if like I could feel my legs, you know, like are my legs still working? Like, am I fine? Because they would always tell me, if you start feeling numbness going into like your glutes and then into your legs, you need to go to the ER. I'm like, okay, great. Like, that's awesome. Like, I appreciate that. You know, like
that's tough to handle. Well, and because you identify, like, this is what you surrounded your life with is fitness and athletics and nutrition and all this stuff. This is how you identify. And then it's just completely pulled out from under you, not just because it's going to affect your work with people and everything, but it's going to affect you personally on what you're capable of as a human when you've reached like this peak that's like being on top of Mount Olympus, I guess, maybe, you know, you're like that's a hard spot to be in when you're completely have that taken out from under you, right?
Yeah, I won't lie. I had a hard time like being on social media watching people lift for a while. I just didn't like it, you know. Because I was unsure of my future with lifting, particularly even ever lifting heavy. And so like I just kind of had to like, I tried to not see what other people were doing, because that was really hard for me. And I also tried to prepare myself to have the relationship with going through this recovery really slowly. Because
it seems like you've been really patient.
Yeah.
From an outside view, at least.
I have definitely, like I said, I have become the Buddha, because I have had to be the most patient person, I feel like, in the entire universe. But I also, I tell people all the time, literally the fear of losing your legs is a pretty good motivation, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
hell yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I basically had one choice or the other. Either I moved forward or there was some unsure of whether or not I'd ever be able to do what I loved again.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to preserve what I love and what I do, it required me to get a hell of a, handle on my mental health, at least to some degree. And that was the other thing that was hard, is because I've always used the gym as my high, my mental health, helper.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is, I have a bad day. Let's go to the gym and like just pump it out and I feel better. And so not having that required me to create a new relationship with that, and also like create new things that would give me that self like soothing,
mm-hmm.
Satisfaction, and without having to go to the gym.
So,
I started meditating.
Go ahead. No, that's what I was just going to ask. Like, what did you go to?
I started reading more. I started meditating a lot for a while. I meditated and listened to like, there was a kind of like a series called, modern stoicism.
Okay.
And I listened.
Are you a fan of stoicism?
Yes.
Okay.
Big fan of philosophy. I'm kind of like a art history nerd too. So
Gotcha.
like that kind of ties into like some of the Greek mythology and Roman mythology as well. But anyways, yeah, so I'm a big fan of that. So I kind of distracted myself with wisdom. I was going to
fantastic.
I was going to become the Buddha because that's what was required of me. So I did that, and I had a lot of people that I vented to. I have a hard time with when I'm silent. Usually, I'm struggling, and so sometimes my friends would try and get me to like, talk to them basically, because I didn't want to talk to anybody. Because like, here's the thing. It's hard for people to process that kind of trauma. Other people.
Yes.
So when people, they want to help. It takes
special souls to be able to take on what you're telling them without brushing it off or deflecting.
Yes. And I learned that was a good lesson that I learned from this too, is because I would have certain people that I would be able to talk to. And then I would have other people that I could tell, like, for example, like they would check on me for the first couple of weeks. And like, then when I wasn't getting better, they definitely didn't want to talk to me anymore. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because they just, it's hard. They don't want to, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to, have to process that. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I, kind of dealt with that a little bit. The other thing that I did was when I was feeling better, because I couldn't really sit in a chair for very long. But when I was feeling a little better, I started gaming pretty hardcore again. I am a gamer and I have a lot of friends that game. So I delved into that and got better at that.
Oh my gosh. Well, but you have to fill it with something, right? And I think that's the part where people will fall into a pit of despair when they've having something taken that's so healthy for them, but haven't found a way to replace it maybe. And it sounds like you at least found things that took place that if your physicality was out of balance, at least your mental and emotional state could take on some challenge in order for you to compensate and to be somewhat healthy at this point, being able to handle all this stuff.
Yeah. And of course it was up and down. I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of time in bed feeling sorry for myself and crying and feeling hopeless. There was plenty of days like that, that's for sure. That was probably the majority of it, but at the end of the day, I kind of had to make a choice. I had to make the choice of either I was gonna just buck up and make it through this and come out better, or I was going to let it eat me alive. Mm-hmm. Because it could have easily eaten me alive for sure.
Well, I think that does happen to some people, for lack of support or whatever other reasons. And like props for getting through that, because that's not easy, and so many people don't get to see what you're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't share a lot of that because one of the things that I've always wanted is I've always had a not so great situation in my life. I've always gone through a lot of things, and I never really wanted the credit for my success to ever be like, she was successful in spite of this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. I always wanted people to see me as, she is successful, end of story. I didn't really want it to always just be about what I overcame, even though I've overcame a lot. Mm-hmm. I wanted people to also just see me as just an athlete and successful in general, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, but it's very respectable to see when people have gone through shit like this and they come back from it. You know, it's this weird underdog story almost. Like, we see people endure, and it gives us relativity, and it gives us personability, I guess, and like the ability to believe in ourselves. I think that's why we like stories like that.
Well, and it's funny you say that, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast, is because I've told, select few people my story, some of my in-depth mm-hmm. story, and they're always like, you need to share this. Like, you need to share this. And, like I said, I've always had that like insecurity of like putting myself that far out there. But it's funny that, especially since I've been going through this back injury and people watching me come back from it the way that I have, I've literally had people reach out to me and be like, I didn't feel comfortable reaching out to you until I knew that you struggled for what you had. Because they like see me on this pedestal, like I'm this fucking massive, mm-hmm. buff chick, and they don't know what it took for me to get there. And so mm-hmm. like, I actually had a conversation in this room with a client that was pretty life-changing at one point, and she told me, I wouldn't have reached out if I hadn't been able to relate to you on the fact that you've been through so much and yet you still overcame that.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that maybe it's just instinctive for all of us, but all of us kind of have this idea of being a hero in whatever realm or element that feels great to us. And I think the hard lesson is learning that the hero it cannot be created without the struggle, without the challenge, without the, falling into the pit 10 fucking times. And, it almost like it looking hopeless. And, no, I think what you've done is fantastic. I think that, the resiliency that you've shown is epic. Not everybody has injuries like this. Not everybody has, such a broad spectrum of experience, and yeah, you should be crazy proud of what you've endured, because most people don't have to go through physical things like this in this type of element or environment where this is who you are. Like, this physical fitness and athleticism is who you are. And I think that's one of the hardest things to lose, whatever it is that you're tied to, is losing the thing that you are the most and not being able to do it. This is fantastic.
I appreciate that. I do try and give myself credit sometimes about it, because, I would have conversations like with Nick and stuff, and I'd be like, I told him I will come out on top. I promise you, I will come out on top. And I just kept saying that to people because, partly trying to convince myself that. And I think that's what I've been doing, mm-hmm. and it's given me an appreciation for where I had gotten, mm-hmm. and an appreciation for my athleticism and the ability to move the way mm-hmm. that I can, because quite frankly, a lot of that's taken for granted. And then as soon as it's taken away, it's like, you have a whole new relationship with it, mm-hmm. and my relationship with the gym has also changed, as far as it not just being my place for mental health and emotion and things like that, but it's become a greater place of growth for me, knowing that I'm able to be in there patiently doing my stupid band exercises that I hate, having people see me be like massively buff, lifting less than 5 pounds, you know, and not caring about that.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in order for me to have a greater goal, a longer term goal. And it has also increased my awareness and my knowledge towards longevity of keeping this, because someday I will most likely have to have a spinal fusion, because my spine will likely continue to shift a little bit over time. And so my job as an athlete and as somebody who wants to move the way that I want to for the rest of my life is that I do the things every day that is required for me to continue to have the longevity in what I love to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's, dude, I can't even say no to a brownie if it's in front of my face. Like, you know, I'm going to eat it and I'm going to deal with the consequences. But no, it's so fucking powerful when you're able to know that process and patience and being present is such a huge element of you getting to where you want to be so much farther in life, you know, holding off or completely obliterating the idea that you might have to have a spinal fusion, you know. There's a crazy fucking power in that, because we're so adapted to looking towards the future and, you know, wanting to be our best. And I think the weird paradox is making sure that we're present and paying attention to the process and being patient enough to almost enjoy what it takes to get there. You know what I mean?
Well, and I've gotten the opportunity to fix some of my other problems. Like I've had shoulder injuries for a long time. You know, I've beaten my body down over the years. And what I've been doing is, now that I have to slow down, it's a really good opportunity for me to make sure that everything works better than it did before by the time I'm able to lift the way that I want to.
Mm-hmm. So taking I mean, you know your story obviously better than me. So what I'm curious about is, there's a lot of people out there that are afraid of physical tasks and athleticism. And it's weird now, for me at least, because I've been in it for so long. There's things that make me nervous about athletics, but I've been lifting weights since I was 14. And the weird part is knowing that there's people out there that are super scared of this shit, and they hear stories like yours, you know, and they use it as an excuse to not do hard things. Right. And you're also a trainer. So what would you tell people, or what do you tell people? What do you even tell the people that you train or you're potentially going to train when it comes to stuff like this and enduring so much? And how do you get people to know how healthy it is to move? It's a big question.
It is a big question. I'm a nerd. So I think most of my clients thrive off of my education that I give them.
Yeah.
So usually I'm able to squash a lot of their worries literally by explaining it to them. Mm-hmm. Like, this is how this works. This is how you get hurt. And this is how you don't get hurt, you know? But also teaching people, properly teaching people how to progress. Because the problem is with most people is their idea of exercise, in my opinion, is pretty linear. They're like, their idea of lifting weights is pretty, like, their scope is so small. And like, for example, I got certified to work with the MS Association in 2018. And I started
what?
The Multiple Sclerosis Association. And so I was working with clients with multiple sclerosis. And obviously those types of clients have a lot of limitations.
Yes.
And multiple sclerosis can be bad. So from anything from them having to be in a wheelchair at all times to some of them, they can walk, but they have a little bit of what we call drop foot, which means that their foot has a hard time communicating with their brain to lift up off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these clients are told by their doctors, you can't ever do this, you'll never do this, blah, 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 right? And so they came, a lot of them came to me super discouraged, like not so sure about exercising.
Maybe almost scared out of it.
Oh, yeah. And so I always start those people like really slow, obviously, even if they're not like a multiple sclerosis client. But if somebody's scared, we go slow. Just slowly introduce them. I'm not trying to kill them. I'm not trying to be like, oh, well, I'll give you the hardest workout possible so you know how that feels. Some people are gonna like that, but most people aren't. And if they're coming into it feeling that way, that's not the best route,
Mm-hmm.
And so I would take what they would consider to be their limitations, and I would show them how it's not a limitation. So whether that be like for some of my multiple sclerosis clients, they're like, well, I can't even stand up out of a chair without support. Okay. All right. Let's practice,
Mm-hmm.
So I would hold their hand and I would let them stand up and sit down in a chair. And then slowly I would back away, let them do a couple reps in and out. And then now I'm like, oh, now you're doing it by yourself. Not, what do you know what I'm saying? Take what they're, I take a lot of times what they're fearful of, and I'll fix that right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can convince them, you can create a relationship with them right off the bat where you can convince them that their current beliefs are not necessarily correct, and you can kind of change them and show them that physically. A lot of times they'll start to listen,
Mm-hmm. Gain confidence, gain belief.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember one of my clients, my MS clients, I loved her. She just wanted to walk at Comic-Con without a wheelchair because she wanted to take pictures without a walker or a wheelchair in the pictures. I said, hell yeah, and so we practiced and we practiced. And I remember the first time I put her on her leg press and she was terrified. She was like, oh my God, my legs don't always work. And I said, don't worry. Someday you're going to be leg pressing more than your weight. And she just looked at me and she laughed. About 3.5 months later, 2 weeks right before her Comic-Con, put her on the leg press and she was just killing it. And I was like, I think you need more weight. And I just kept putting the weight on. I wasn't really telling her how much it weighed anymore. And by the time she was done, she had leg pressed twice her weight.
Wow.
And she looked at me and she goes, I never thought in my entire life I would ever be capable of doing something like this.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And I said, yeah. I was like, you have a lot more potential than you know. And then here 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks later, whatever it was, she went to Comic-Con and she sent me all her pictures without her wheelchair, without her walker. And she was like, I can do things. So no longer in her head was, I can't do this, I can't do that. It was, I can. Mm-hmm. So the way that I go about things with clients is that, or I'll give them my own example. I've made 1,000, 50,000 mistakes. I'll be like, hey, I've done this and it messed up this, but this is how you fix it, or whatever. I've used myself as a guinea pig for long enough, and I've watched people work out for 10 years, that it's pretty easy for me. And I'm a really big psychopath about form too. Like, I'm a little crazy about that. So I just make sure that they're comfortable. I teach them. The biggest thing with clients a lot like that and nutrition is you just have to change their relationship with it. Mm-hmm. Change your relationship with exercise, change their relationship with working out. This is not a punishment, figure out a way that they can enjoy it. That doesn't look the same for everybody. Figure out a way that they can enjoy their nutrition. That doesn't look the same for everybody. And that's why I think having coaches and an informed coach is important, is because it isn't the same for everybody, and it shouldn't be the same for everybody.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, you just got to change their brain to the I can't to I can, or take their worries and figure out a way to exemplify it to them and turn it into a confidence.
So if we take that perspective and relate it to nutrition, because this is a big one, and I don't know how like it's the most cliche thing that gets thrown around. Hey, you know, health is 70% diet and 30%, you know, your physical, you know, attribute. What do you do about nutrition? Like, what do you tell people about nutrition? What are the things that we need to throw away? Because you know there's a bunch of bullshit out there, right? And how do you think that we should look at nutrition, or what do you think that we're having the biggest struggle with?
I think people's relationship with food's bad.
A lot of it.
I think that's a big problem. And I also think that people tie. So one of the things that I do with a lot of my clients is I don't really try and stress the way that they look a lot. I try to stress different metrics of success, whether that be their mental health or lifting or whatever, because especially particularly with like females, but even males too, sometimes fixing their nutrition is actually hard because of the way that they see their body.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's kind of like if you have a client who I'm reverse dieting and they're like, well, I feel fluffier now. Their instinct is that they want to eat less food,
mm-hmm.
but that's not the right thing. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, so I try to teach them the science behind it and try and also set expectations for them. Like, hey, mm-hmm. in the beginning, your metabolism, we're going to get it a little bit better. You might gain a little bit of weight. You might lose a little bit of weight depending on where you were at, you know, when I started with you. Don't give them the expectation that we're going to lose weight, all your weight in 4 weeks, this, that, and the other. I do not preach big, you know, quick fixes or anything like that. I think that setting reasonable expectations is really important. And I also think that every time I sit down with a nutrition client, I ask them what is reasonable for them. I don't say, hey, I'm going to give you a meal plan. Hey, I'm going to give you macros. Hey, this is what it's going to look like. Mm-hmm. I can give them a perfect plan, but if it's not reasonable and they don't like following it and they have a bad relationship with it, it's only temporary. It's not going to last mm-hmm. very long. And then it also makes them have a bad relationship with food because you got all these people who are like, I have this meal plan for my coach and I hate it. And I hate what I eat every day. And I hate this and I hate that. What? Like, no, I hate that. You know, a lot of times when I make a meal plan with a client, I will literally sit down with them and I'll say, hey, what do you want to eat for breakfast? What do you want to eat for meal 2? What do you want to eat? And I know enough about food that I can make it fit. I can make mm-hmm. about what they want. Like somebody, hey, I want to eat a sandwich. Okay, we'll make that work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think it's really, really, really important that you set reasonable expectations on what you are willing to follow for your nutrition. And that can differ on what your goals are too. Cause like, obviously if your adherence and the way you need to do nutrition is going to be 100% different. And you're trying to be a bodybuilder versus just a lifestyle client, mm-hmm. you know, I also try and, you know, stress them. This is a lifestyle, meaning that this is how I would like you to eat as a guideline every day. But I also want you to enjoy yourself. You know what I mean? I think the all or nothing mindset is horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. Unless you're trying to get on stage or you're getting ready for a competition or whatever. It's not an all or nothing mindset. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to go have a weekend where you know, splurge a little bit. Cool. Great. I don't care. Get back on track on Monday. Mm-hmm. Whatever.
Well, and it's like you have to include some sort of humanity to the formula, right? You have to include some positivity and some experience to what's going on. And not everybody wants to be an athlete. Some people just want to be lifestylers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey, you want to eat ice cream every night? You know, that's kind of a little bit of an extreme, but like, I'll be like, hey, you want to eat a half a container of Halo Top every night? Cool. I'll fit that into your macros. I don't care. Like,
damn.
If you want to, like,
sounds like a day.
I usually ask people what is one thing that you want to eat during your day? Like, what is there something that like you don't like, you're going to crave and you want me to include it in your plan because you're going to want it. Like, be reasonable with yourself. If you crave a piece of chocolate every night, fuck, let's put it in your plan.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to feel guilty about that. There's no reason for that.
Hell yeah.
You know, I did log my food religiously for almost 3 years. But my goals were, obviously being bodybuilding. I haven't logged my food in like 2 years now, but I'm able to maintain the physique that I have because I learned how to eat lifestyle. I know what I can get away with. I know what I can't get away with. I know how to eat pretty reasonably. I know how to roughly get 20-30 grams of protein per meal. I know how to get roughly 40 to 60 carbs per meal. I know all you got to do is apply it, and that's kind of how I also have attributed my success in not yo-yoing a lot, is that I don't restrict myself that much. I will eat what I want to eat. I just will offset it with what it needs to offset with. If I'm gonna have if I'm gonna eat a whole entire pizza in a day, I should have like a healthier breakfast and like maybe supplement a protein shake or two, make sure I get my protein in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Cool. Like, other than that, I'm not too worried about it. If I feel like I'm going overboard, reel it in. My client's like, hey, I'm gaining weight, I'm going, reel it in. Don't feel guilty. That's the other thing. People will sit there and be like, well, I ate this and this and I messed up and I gained weight. All right, cool. Whatever. Tomorrow's a new day.
It doesn't mean that you can't also shed it back off.
Yeah, it'll come back off. Well, first of all, it's not permanent. If you mess up for 1 or 2 days, you got water weight. I'm sorry, but it takes 3,500 calories for you to gain a whole pound. Unless if you ate a whole 3,500 extra calories than you actually burned that day, you definitely didn't gain a whole pound.
I might be guilty of trying to do that.
It happens sometimes. I mean, I've been there, done that. But generally speaking,
you're either that happy or that depressed. One of the two.
Yeah, exactly. Or had that many beers. Yeah, I mean, it happens, but in the general rule is you didn't actually put any weight on. You just, you look a little different. So I try to convince my clients to not tie their success fully to the way that they look day to day, because that also shifts, with stress and what, how much sleep you got. And, and then people just freak out. And like, I know a lot of people who, they'll look heavier one day, so they won't eat as much the next day. That's just not how it works. The reason why and this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, the reason why you want to eat, every few hours is not necessarily to quote unquote speed up your metabolism.
Okay.
It's actually to keep your insulin levels steady.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Because spikes and drops in your insulin levels, that's what creates weight gain. That also creates insulin sensitivity, which means that you became more sensitive to insulin, which means that when you take in a bunch of carbs, your body freaks out and like doesn't necessarily use it, it'll store it. So like you want to keep your insulin level stable. That's why like when I do meal plans, I generally, you will see that your carbs per meal, besides like your pre and post workout meal, they're probably going to be pretty similar. And that's for that reason.
And I mean, this kind of goes back to what you were preaching in the beginning, was getting away from the idea that this progress is linear. It's at this point, I don't know what is specifically linear, maybe K through 12 education, but where you have marks. But I definitely have experienced that in all the years that I've been lifting. Is my body's changed a bunch, my strength has changed a bunch, my mindset has changed a bunch, my metabolism's changed a bunch. Like it's always been a constant up and down. And I've looked at particular goals that make me happy. I know that I'm not going to eat perfect every day, especially as a powerlifter, because I have this basic excuse that I'm allowed to be fat. Yeah, it's I know that if I try to focus on the positive.
Send me a message. 1 second. Just send me a message with the code again. Oh, sorry.
And you know this of your arm?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll lock you in from the actually I'll do that. You'll have to do that if you want to lock in.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Good.
I'm sorry. What was your last question?
Well, so I think I was just stating my opinion on it, and it's if I maintain it kind of sounds like what you're saying is making sure that people are not focusing on their insecurities and the bad things, and getting them to focus more on what they can control and what they are after. So if I don't beat myself up if I eat a little bit of bad food, because I know my focus is eating as much whole food as possible, because that makes me feel like I'm doing the best that I can for my body, is coming back to eating as much whole food as possible. So if I get off track, it's not a big deal. If I, miss a meal or whatever, it's not a big deal, because my focus has always been, okay, back to whole food, because that makes sense to me the most about me having the best nutrition I can without actually hiring somebody like you to be a nutrition coach, and especially when I'm off season, it's I know that I've done it long enough that my basic goal, foundational goal, is to eat as much whole food as possible. But that doesn't mean everything has to be that, or else I'd freak the fuck out and I'd never be able to enjoy simple foods that are awesome when you go out to dinner or, whatever,
Right. Yeah. And that's what I encourage with clients. And that's also why I set other goals besides physique goals and food goals, because when they're hyper focused on just those two things, if one of those things gets messed up, it'll derail them sometimes, and it's like, your body is going to fluctuate. I mean, it is. It's there'll be times where you're going to be a little bit leaner, and there's going to be times where you're going to be a little bit fluffier, because you're in a strength phase or whatever, and you need more food and you're doing less cardio. And I think, having a good grasp, setting that expectation, but also having a good grasp of what's going to happen, but also making sure that there's other ways to determine your success. Because let's be honest, most people stay in it and stay motivated based off of progress, right? So we have to find other metrics of progress to measure. Obviously, as a powerlifting athlete, for you, a lot of times that's going to be like the weight that you're lifting. Sometimes for my clients, I'll give them homework of, hey, how did you do this week? Why did this, and this? But I was derailed because of stress. So I will literally give homework for people that requires being able to kind of shut the mind off and get better mental health, because I know that ultimately in the grand scheme of things, that's going to make their food and their physique better, because I mean, what's going on in your head really controls everything. So I'll give them those types of goals, or I'll give them flexibility goals, or I'll give them and obviously we'll do like metric goals off of their watches, or I've used heart rate zone measurements, so I can see what we can decrease their resting heart rate. We can look at what their food and their insulin sensitivity is when they get their blood work done. Like, I just try and give them different goals to focus on, because I have noticed that when I do that, in the long run, it all comes full circle, right? And then now all of a sudden their physique and their food is better, because they were doing that passively, not overthinking it, not being crazy psycho about it. They're passively working. And now all of a sudden they're a month later, like, oh man, I've lost 1% body fat. And man, I'm lifting, 20 pounds more on this and 50 pounds more on that. And I'm like, gotcha. You know what I'm saying? Like,
told ya.
You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise, they'll come into the gym and like, well, I didn't increase my weights today, or my weight didn't come down this week, and for me, that's really not that important. And then as soon as your client starts stressing about their goals, now you got cortisol levels that are ruining everything. Mm-hmm. So you're like, I don't really want you to be stressed. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I really, really, really try and get people to incorporate all of the modalities. And that's why I've actually brought a lot of my clients here. Sometimes I'll use that as kind of an incentive for them. Hey, you hit some sort of goal. Let's go into the massage chairs. Let's go get you a cocoon session. Let's bring you in the salt room so you can relax. Let's go get a tan, like whatever you want to do here. I'll bring them in here, have a float, hey, you're having a hard time sleeping. Let's get you in a couple floats, see if we can get your sleep back on track.
Mm-hmm.
I really tried to get my clients to encompass the entirety of fitness rather than people having that narrow mind of, lift weights, get on the cardio machine, lift weights, get on the cardio machine. Oh, I missed a workout. I'm bad. Oh, I gained weight. Like it's such a linear thought in most people's brain. And I try to, I just try to give them a different perspective. Mm-hmm. Like I think the perspective that online gives us and social media gives us and this, that, and the other, it creates blocks for people.
Totally.
More than anything.
Fucking totally.
So I try to take person to person and kind of when I sit down and talk to them in their consultation, I really try and figure out what their blocks are.
Mm-hmm.
And once I figure out what their blocks are, and then we fix that, we take your blocks away and then that's when your potential comes out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it seems like your overall, I think this is the first that I've kind of heard like this overall encompassing balance of what health actually is, which is almost crazy because I just know you as this little fucking animal, and how to build the body. But I've enjoyed this conversation because it's your storytelling has just shown so much more, and I think that's my biggest takeaway from this is like there's so much more to this shit. And so if there were a message that you wanted everybody to hear from, based off of what we were talking about today, like what's the biggest thing that you think you want to give everybody?
I think the greatest thing that people don't ever understand is that their potential is a lot more that they think, and that they need to, and to unlock that, they need to have serious, honest conversations with themselves about what's holding them back and get tired of their shit. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the only one, I can give you all of the best tools, but you are the only one at the end of the day who can be tired enough of your own shit to change that. And that requires self-reflection in whatever way that works for you. And it requires you to day in and day out believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the most important thing that people need to do, is to believe in themselves, understand that other people are struggling, and understand that their potential is, the sky is the fucking limit.
Fuck yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's almost difficult, but once you kind of experience a little bit of it, you start to understand what that really means. And maybe people just need to reach out just a little bit, put themselves on the edge just a little bit, and maybe get an idea of what that fucking means, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I attribute, people are like, oh, you look so crazy, you're so huge, you're so strong. And part of that was me being the hardcore fitness person, day in, day out, only cared about the training and the food. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the reason why I've been able to maintain it for so long is because I decided to incorporate the other things. The reason why people burn out is because they don't do the other things. They don't fix the mental health. They don't fix all of the other things that make your training and your nutrition what it really should be.
And a big one's probably stress, right?
Oh, yeah.
Fucking hey, yeah.
And that's a hard one. And that looks different for everybody to change that. But it's super, super important.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, Jenn, where does everybody find you? Where can they find all the things about your training, about your expertise, about your story? Where can everybody find you?
So I have an Instagram called jenndeesfitness. So just my first last name with, so Jenn, Jenn, Dees, and then fit. And then I do have a TikTok also, that's JENNN, then DEEZ. Yes, Dees nuts. I've heard it. I'm fine with it. Don't worry about it. And then I also have started my own spot in the Trainerize app. So I do have an app that I run my clients through now. And I will give you the link for that, so you can share that with everybody.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to make sure to put all that stuff in the show notes so it's very easily and accessible for everybody. Beyond that, Jenn, thank you so much for being on this episode. It was fantastic. Your story was amazing. And I feel like it's super inspiring. And it also tells me I need to kick my own ass a little bit more because relatively I'm like, man, I need to step up my game. But yeah, thank you for being here. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to tell you guys all my story. Yeah.
Everybody's going to love it. For everybody out there, stay strong, stay relevant-minded. This is your host, Zach, out. Hey guys, I hope that all things we've brought here, including the people, have helped you change the way that you see the world. And if it has, then it would help us so much if you leave a rating and a comment on iTunes or give any feedback wherever you listen to the RMP. Thank you for listening in, and don't forget to follow and subscribe. Question everything, my friends.